When did you become a Christian to the point where you really cared to know if it's true?
When I went to prison.
Wait, did you say they were doing drug deals at the church services?
At the church service. And he went to the mess hall, and that's where you eat. And as they were walking out of the mess hall, someone was jealous of him leaving and walked up and tried to stab him with the blade. I could have been the guy on the cross going to heaven, going to paradise with Jesus for no reason.
What did you do to violate your parole?
Today on the Austin and Matt podcast, we get to sit down with Neal Sendlak of the Gnostic Informant YouTube channel. As of the time of this recording, he has a couple 100,000 subscribers, and he's been featured on multiple other podcasts that are much larger than ours, like the Danny Jones podcast, as an expert in ancient Christian scripture and ancient Christianity. And so one of the things that I really like to do is if you're getting a lot of information from somebody, the next question I have is, well, who are you? Who are you that I should listen to this information, right? The medium is the message sometimes. And so with Neal, I just wanted to know his life. And he comes from being incarcerated and being on hard drugs and then finding Jesus while in prison and then getting into debates with a lot of pastors and experts on Christianity and continuing to move on and figure out what this whole life thing is about. And it is so fascinating. He knows so many stories about early church fathers from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries. He will just rattle these names off to the point where we were trying to do B-roll for this episode, and he says them so fast that like you almost can't keep up. You can't keep up. I asked him off camera how much scripture he reads, how much like ancient text, and he said at least 5 to 10 hours a week. He has a habit of at nighttime when he goes to bed, he just reads for 1 to 2 hours, and he's been doing it for 15 years. So, I mean, he is a wealth of information to the point where he doesn't have a PhD, but he regularly has PhDs listening to his channel and pinging him for information and for advice because he's so well versed. So you're going to hear a bunch of really amazing stories from early church fathers in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th century that I never knew existed. And I really appreciate it because he paints this nuance. Like, I think we all like to think that the church has been this one mono thing that has moved through history, always in agreement. But I think the reality is it's always been fighting. And like, there's different groups splitting off. And he knows about so many of these groups. And so we get to hear a lot of those stories all under the framework of his life. And so I'm grateful that he came on the show. And this is a second part of a 3-part series that we're doing on the Austin and Matt podcast, where we had Derek last week of Myth Vision. We have Neal of the Gnostic Informant this time. And next week, we have the fireside chat with all of us sitting down together. So these are standalone episodes. You don't have to listen to all of them sequentially or anything. But if you like ancient Christianity, ancient scriptures, then you'll want to check out all 3. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Austin and Matt podcast.
Why are these things the things that you were interested in? Like, of all the things in the universe to be interested in, why do you think this hooked you?
When I was a Christian, I wanted to know if it was true. I wanted to know am I really following this path because it's true, or am I doing this because I want it to be true?
When did you become a Christian to the point where you really cared to know if it's true?
When I went to prison.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
in
shoot.
2011, I went to prison for possession and drug use and all that stuff. And then I started reading the Bible cover to cover when I was in there. And then I started going to the library and reading other religious stuff, like stuff about Buddhism, Upanishads, Vedas. And I was like comparing them and kind of like looking at both and which one of these is true. But then when I didn't really answer that question in prison. I became a Christian. I thought Christianity was the best. I thought the Bible was the most like complete. And the other ones were like,
JV.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I got out, I did a nosedive deep into the church. Went to church twice a week. Was the first one there. I had the key to the church. I got there before the pastor. Sometimes that's how I learned how to edit videos. Because he wanted to record all of his sermons, and I would edit them, upload them on his YouTube channel. So that's how I got editing from that.
Why did you start reading about all of these things in prison?
Because I really wanted to. At first, I was trying to find out if the Bible was historically accurate, if it matched up with what like science is saying about like evolution and old Earth and round, like all that stuff. And I remember like trying to make it fit. Like I remember reading the Bible and going, all right, it says right here that the earth is 6,000 years old because it's, we're putting Adam is only this many years before Jesus, or we're like 4,000 BC. And I was like, but maybe this is like an allegory. Maybe Adam represents the first civilized human. Maybe there's like some sort of allegorical thing behind all this. And I started thinking like that. And that's kind of how I got into Gnosticism too, because the Gnostics were very much interpreting everything allegorically.
Was there anyone coming to prison that was like helping you along think about these thoughts?
There were outside churches coming in.
Okay.
They were doing like baptisms and all types of stuff. So Sundays.
Was everybody pretty responsive to that in church in prison?
Yeah. Everyone, it seemed like everybody was either a Muslim or a Christian or some faith, because it was like a free get out of the unit for an hour. So everyone took advantage of it.
Oh,
everyone wanted to go, and it was a nice way to see people from the other units. There's drug deals going on in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh, yeah. People would go to church just so they can see their friend from a different unit that they're never going to see unless they go there, and they would pass things along to each other.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was like everyone did it. There was only one Jewish person I met in jail. He was having a rough time.
Wait, did you say they were doing drug deals at the church services?
At the church services.
How are people sourcing drugs in prison? Are people just
what they would do was they would have a visit come in, and the visitor, if it was his girlfriend, they would like kiss them and transfer it through the mouth. And sometimes they would swallow it, or some people, they would go in the bathroom, put it up their ass, and bring it back to the unit that way. But they did it.
That is the main method.
Yeah,
for getting them into
either swallow it or boof it.
No,
that's how you did it. Yeah, and you'd be surprised. They did it. They did it because if whoever had the bag was the man. You were the king.
You had currency.
You had everything. Yeah. You were absolutely. It was the imperative. There was a lot of drugs in there, tons of it.
Wow.
Did the guards not care? Is it kind of like
did.
look the other way, kind of keep it down?
Number one, it depends on the guard. Some of them are less. Some of them are just trying to do their time.
Yeah.
They're trying to get in there, do their 8 hours, go home.
They're just doing their job.
They're like, just don't kill each other.
Yeah.
Then there's other ones that are like, they got the badge, they get the power trip. Then they're the ones looking. So as an inmate, you knew which guards to. Okay, this guy's on a shift. Everyone chill out for the next 8 hours.
Yeah.
And the next guy comes in. All right, now we're free again. So you knew based on who the CO was, what to do, how to act. You guys are taking me back now, thinking about, this is pretty crazy.
What happens when you review being in prison? How did that psychologically affect you?
Oh man, it's a different world in there. Like, you stay with your kind, and I don't mean that like I'm not proud of it, but it's just the way it was. Like, you go when you.
It's the rules.
It's rules. Like in the county jail, a lot of people watch this probably said, I've been to county jail. It's not like that. I played chess with a black guy and I'm white. Yeah, in the county, it's like that. Once you get into state, it's different. The rules change. You cannot sit with a person of a different race, or you will be targeted, or something bad will happen to you. You have to go, like, the white people are called, we call themselves the Woods, Peckerwoods. And that's why I hung around with, because that's how I got to be comfortable and not die.
That's how you survive.
Yeah, it's how I survived, So that's psychologically, it kind of, it's crazy, because when you get out, you realize what of a dog eat dog world that was. Like, I remember it would be commissary day and everybody would go and get their commissary. And it was like the people who had the big bags of commissary. They were like, they're walking around like like Santa Claus with a big bag around them, like kind of showing it off. Like, how a dog has a bone in its mouth and it's showing off. Look, I got a bone. Look how cool I am. This is how people in prison were. They were like, it was like a race to show the other person, I'm loved on the outside. I'm matter to people on the outside, and you don't. Look how big my commissary bag is. Look how much money I have in my account. Look how long I can go on the phones for, because I can get my people on the outside to pay my phone bill. And it was like this weird arms race, psychological arms race of people trying to outdo each other as far as looking how they look.
For status or
For
power?
status,
Or
power, all that.
that's because I guess you can't really think long term while you're in.
It's like just like the only thing you have to do in there is like just compare each other to each other.
Yeah.
You're all in prison, so you're all on the bottom of society. So what happens is we're all on the bottom of society, and we're all trying to convince ourselves, but we're not really like everyone else. Like look, I had a visit today. My girlfriend came. See how good I am compared to you? When was the last time you had a visit? 6 weeks ago. Ooh, you're rough. I'm not like you. So there was like a big, I'm telling you, if anyone's been in prison, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It was a really weird, dark world of people just trying to, it's dog eat dog world. It's whoever you can take advantage of, you're taking advantage of. Whoever can take advantage of you, you're staying out of their way. You're trying to play this weird game of like it's a Game of Thrones in prison. Like everyone's trying to gain more power as much as possible.
And it has real ramifications. Like, was there a lot of physical violence?
Oh yeah, yes. And there were you just reminded me I had one of the people right next to me, unit bunk right next to me, was leaving the next day. He had 24 hours left, and he went to the mess hall, and that's where you eat. And as they were walking out of the mess hall, someone was jealous of him leaving and walked up and tried to stab him with the blade. He got into a big fight. He got thrown in the box. I think he caught a new charge and had to stay in time longer because someone else attacked him and he fought back. And I don't know how he got taken away from the unit, so he might have beat the case and they might have let him out. But the point is, like, that was a reality in there. People are trying to get you to not go home because they're jealous. That was another thing. Like, when I knew I was going home soon, I only did 18 months. My bid was 1 1/3 to 4 years was the bid. So I did 16 months, sorry, not 18 months. When I was in the last month, I didn't tell anyone.
Do they know can you keep that hidden?
My close friends knew.
Okay.
But I wasn't going around going, I got 1 day left.
Yeah.
I was just pretending that it was like I just got there.
Yeah.
Like you just don't say nothing. And then when they call your name to leave, it's too
You're
late. They don't have a blade. They're not ready to, like, they're not doing nothing to you. You're leaving. So but I saw people mess that up and talk about them leaving, and I'm leaving in 24 hours. You ain't gonna do nothing to me. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're getting in a fight. They're going to the box. They're doing more time now. So it's psychologically crazy. And then Christianity speaks to people in those places because you go to these churches, you go to these Sunday, or you're reading the Bible in your cell. And the Bible has a message for people who are on the downtrodden. Like Jesus is on the cross with 2 people who are criminals, and he saves them with them. I remember reading that passage and being like, "Whoa, that could have been me. I could have been the guy on the cross going to heaven, going to paradise with Jesus for no reason, just because he wants me to." Or there's like the parable of the prodigal son, which is, there's 2 sons of a vineyard owner, and the one son is a good son. He does everything right. He listens to his father. He works on the field. He doesn't mess up. He doesn't spend his money on prostitutes. Doesn't do anything wrong. The other son is a screw up. He spends all his money on prostitutes. He goes. He doesn't work for his father. He leaves. He goes to another land. He spends all of his money, and then he comes back with his tail between his legs. And the father welcomes him home and throws a party for him. And the other son's like, I never got a party thrown for me. I didn't do anything wrong. And he was like, no, you don't understand. This is the greatest day ever. And I just remember thinking of this parable and being like, that's me. I'm the prodigal son. I'm the one that's supposed to mess up and get it all back together through grace, of God's grace. So when you're in those dark places of like this hell world of prison, Christianity saves you. It does. I can say that for myself. That's how I got so into Christianity because it does have the redeeming power for people like myself. It's a powerful thing. I'll never deny that about Christianity.
So what happened once you got out?
So as soon as I got out, I started meeting up with friends who I knew were Christians, who I reached out to and said, hey, I just got out of prison. Which church do you go to? And they would go, I'll go to this church over here. And I started following them. There's a couple of churches that I bounced around to. Some of them are evangelical, Zionist type churches, very Christian or very conservative.
Like Pentecostal, charismatic.
That's another one. That's another one I
Wow.
went to. I went to another church that was Pentecostal, charismatic, more liberal, but more like they spoke different languages. There was a Spanish pastor, an English pastor. People were speaking in tongues. That was one of the churches that I did for a little while.
Signs and wonders.
Signs and wonders, yeah. And then the other church that I mentioned that I went to was the Baptist Evangelical, born again, very conservative, very Zionist, right-wing church. I tried that one. I was at for a long time too. So I tried like I said, I grew up Catholic. You would think I would go back to being a Catholic again, but I didn't. I got convinced by the rhetoric that the Catholic Church was like not the real church. I got convinced by that rhetoric. But so I never went back to Catholicism, but I tried other churches out and then left.
What are you doing for work
Right now?
when you get out?
Oh, so I was doing construction for a little bit, pouring concrete finisher. I worked other sales jobs. I sold cars, was a car dealer. And the last job I had was at a tire factory, Sumitomo Rubber. That was the job I was working at when I started doing YouTube. And that was the job I left when YouTube started to take off.
Wow.
So I did a lot of jobs: concrete finisher, asbestos removal, demolition, selling cars, sales, and factories.
Are you trying to stay out of prison at this point? Are you trying to? What's the point of life in this moment for you? Is it going to church and serving God and Jesus?
Yeah, I'm on parole, so I had a couple years of parole. I actually messed up for a little bit. I started like relapsing, and went back to prison for not even 6 months, and they put me in a boot camp, a shock camp. Military shock camp,
like
for
exercise.
Parole, yes, for parole violators. This was in 2012. So I did the bid in 2011, got out 2012. Towards the end of 2012, it was like October, November, December. I think it was. I think I got out in December, actually, right before Christmas.
What did you do to violate your parole?
Piss dirty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was like,
got it.
What do they do in shock camps? What the heck is that?
This is crazy. This place got closed down. It's called Willard. It's in New York State. It's a New York State prison boot camp for parolees. And you would go there, and it's 97 to 6 months, 97 days to 6 months, depending on how you do. I got out in the 97 days. Got out quick.
They're motivated. Right. Yeah.
Motivated. They wake you up at 5 a.m. You go outside, no matter what the weather is like. You go outside, you run 3 miles. You get on the grass, you do push-ups, sit-ups, all types of aesthetics and jumping jacks until like you're all doing it. You have a drill instructor. Then you march like a military march in step. You do like the about phases, all the stuff you learn in military boot camp. Like I could show you how to do like the correct stance and the about phase like a military person does. They check your locker, make sure all your stuff is exactly where it should be. The toothbrush has got to be facing to the left. Your books got to be stacked on top of each other. Your clothes have to be folded perfectly. You have to iron your clothes. You have to have your boots shined. You have to shine them every single day. If they're not shined, they do crazy shit to you. Like for example, you get caught talking. You can't talk. You get caught talking to somebody. Can't talk all day. You're
all
quiet,
day.
all day. And then around
days.
7 o'clock p.m. or 6 o'clock p.m. after the last mess hall visit, then they say, okay, now everyone can relax and talk. But you got to be quiet. You got to talk like this. You have to say, hey, how's your day today? My day was good. Like that's how you talk. You're like that the whole time for the whole 97 days.
So the bulk of the day, every day, you're not allowed to speak.
No, you're just programming. Unless they like ask you.
Unless they talk to you.
Yeah, like you're programming. If you get caught talking during program, they will make you hold hands with the person you were talking to as a punishment all day. So there was inmates in there, like gangster motherfuckers in there holding hands with other people. So because they didn't want to go to prison, because they're hanging your bid. My bid was 4 years max. I did 1 1/3.
Hanging your bid?
So
What does that mean?
When I got out of prison in 16 months on a 4-year bid,
Oh,
which means they could have said, go do the rest of your 4 years.
go back in.
Or do this shock camp.
Got it.
So everyone in there
Doesn't want to
has
go
some
back.
number over their head.
Yeah.
Some of them are 15. Some of them are 20. And they don't want to go back.
Yeah.
So they're going to hold that person's hand all day. If you get caught taking too much food in the mess hall, they make you wear the food. Put it in your pockets, wear it the rest of the day. Can't take it out until the day's over. There are people who were not having their bed made right. If their bed wasn't made correctly, they took your bed and threw it out the window.
No way.
Yes.
The mattress.
The mattress. Everything out the window.
And you had to go get it?
And they would make you go get it.
And do it all over
And
again.
remake your whole bed. Yeah.
What's the social because you said in prison it's a lot of like
that place is closed down now because it was so bad.
really.
Yeah, if you look it up right now, there's still a website for it, but they changed the program. They took all the boot camp stuff out. It's now just like a rehab program.
Oh.
But
It's called Willard. W-I-L-L-A-R-D.
Did you guys form like bonds? Was it like stronger bonds or less strong
with the
bonds
people in there?
prison? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I still
Yeah?
talk to some of those people.
Really?
Yeah, I got their numbers and talked to them on Facebook and stuff like that. Yeah.
Looking back, do you think it was?
It was all people from New York City, from Syracuse and Brooklyn, the Bronx, because this is a New York State thing. So people from all over New York. So I met people from all over New York that I still talk to. That one of them I even visited when I was in New York. The one friend.
Was it that?
That was a crazy experience. And I
does
never
it-
went back to prison ever again after that.
Yeah, does it feel punitive while you're there? Is it kind of like are they
was-
there to?
It was hell while I was there. When I finished it, it felt like the greatest accomplishment I ever did.
Yeah, I
It
bet you're in great
I
shape.
yes, I came out with like a 6-pack.
Yeah.
Great. I could do like 20 pull-ups when I got out of there. Best shape I've ever been in my life. And it did sort of work as far as it gave me structure. Like when I got home, I caught myself doing my laundry correctly. And I was like actually like doing things right.
It built habits.
It built habits, yeah.
And it made you never want to go back to prison.
Never want to go back again. Never went back after that. That was my last ever entrance into anything. Like that was the last thing I did. Any time I did, actually.
It was effective.
It was effective.
Did it like I don't know what sort of drugs you were into, but did it like keep you off of like cigarette everything? Did the idea of even putting something in your body kind of?
I still smoked cigarettes for a while after that. I don't smoke anymore, but I did smoke cigarettes for that. But no, I stopped opiates, which was my downfall, which was Oxycontin, and even got into heroin towards the end. They stopped all that stuff. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I mean that part's awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been years since I've had any type of
Oh, that's great.
anything like that.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Before getting into prison, after the shock camp, I know there's a gap in there for a while. Did it like instill a sense of hustle in you? Because it seems like you've got a lot of hustle. Like you just know how to.
I think so. I think it definitely did something on my mindset of getting things done, doing things right, doing things correctly, being precise, that type of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So, how did you start getting into early Christianity? How did that bring in the texts that you're learning? Because that your whole channel is around Gnostic
Yes.
Informant. How did that go into this?
So one of the churches that I wound up in years down the road was an evangelical Baptist church that was teaching that the King James Bible in English was the only divinely inspired Bible.
It's the original version, I think. Yeah.
That's what they say.
That's what they say. Yeah.
This is the original English Bible.
From
it's like-
1611.
which is weird because it's in 1611. Like, I thought Jesus was born
in English.
And they say, well, you know, so they'll try to explain it, and they'll say the Greek and Hebrew manuscripts are correctly translated through the King James, and this is the only perfect Bible you can read in English. And I was like, okay, I wanted to know if that was correct. They're making claims that I can finally check here, because a lot of times you can't, like Jesus rose from the dead. How do I check if that happened?
Right.
You want it to be true when you're a Christian, but you can't really go back unless you can have a time machine. You can't check to see if it happened. Finally, my church that I'm at is making a claim that I can actually do the work. This is how I started getting into like this sort of scholarly mindset, because I started looking up online the whole manuscript traditions. I learned about who Bart Ehrman was. He's a textual critic. He's big into this stuff. I started finding academic videos on the textual inerrancy question, or the, textual criticism. And I'm looking up manuscripts, and I found out that the King James Bible does not have the perfect translations. It actually uses a lot of the Latin manuscripts that we find in like the 400s AD. So it's going through a different transmission of biblical of manuscripts. It's not lined up perfectly. There are some cases where the King James does go accordingly to some of these older ancient manuscripts, but not always. It's not perfect, and I found that out pretty quickly. For example, in the letter called 1 John, not the Gospel of John, the letter called 1 John, verses 5 through 7, there is a passage about the Trinity in the King James Bible. And it says, "For these three are one, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And they'll go, see, the Trinity is right there in 1 John 5:7. But then you actually compare that to the oldest textual, like they call it the received text, the Textus Receptus. It's like the majority of the manuscripts that go back as far as possible, 2nd, 3rd century. Those don't have that. Those just have, "For these three are one." It does not then say the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Those verses were added by the Latin writer Jerome. I think it's Saint Jerome, 4th century writer, who wrote the Latin Bible called the Vulgate. He added those verses. So the King James is using added verses. And I remember my pastor used to say this. He used to say, these modern Bibles that these scholars are putting out, they're taking verses out. They're demonic. This is Satan's Bible. And I thought, that's interesting. And I looked and I go, holy crap, he's right. The King James has more verses and these Bibles have less verses. Sounds like he's right. But really, they were using added verses, not taking out verses. So these modern Bibles were actually more correct.
The people that had gone from Greek to Latin, Jerome had added some Latin verses in there. And then when it went from Latin to English,
those got carried over.
Right.
So the reason why you asked how I got into early Christianity, this sort of opened me up to look at things more scholarly. So then the next question, then I realized I'm at a church that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I have to find another church. So I started bouncing around. And as I'm bouncing around from church to church.
Did you try and ask that church? Did you show that to them and say, what gives?
And they gaslit me.
They gaslit you.
I had a meeting after the church was over. After this, I didn't do it in the middle of church.
Right, sure.
It was just me, the pastor.
Privately, hey, I want to talk to you about something.
Yeah. It was just me, the pastor, my friend, and another church guy. It was just the four of us. We were sitting down, and I showed him what I found. Showed him the Greek. He said to me, actually, it wasn't even him. It was the other guy, because he brought the other guy because he thought the other guy would be able to explain it good. The other guy said to me, "No. You're whatever you're getting this information from is lying to you. We know that these manuscripts exist." And I said, "Okay, can you show it to me?" I'm not kidding. He pulled up a website called 1611kingjames.com. So I go, okay, let's hear it out. He shows me the website points to Jerome's Bible in Latin. I go, that's what I just said. He looked at it and goes, "Oh, Jerome had Greek manuscripts that we've lost." And I go, "Well, we don't have that, so I can't check to see if you're right." He's like, "If you believe in the Holy Spirit, you will know that this is telling us the truth because we are in the true church." It was circular reasoning.
Oh, man.
And I saw it. And I remember just being like, how are you not seeing this? You're begging the question right now. You just assumed that Jerome had Greek manuscripts because you want there to be manuscript. We don't have those, though. And Jerome doesn't even say that. And then he is right. He didn't say, I got
He
this
doesn't
Greek.
say I have
No,
Greek manuscripts.
Nothing. They're just inserting this in there to make themselves
Make it right.
to make it right. So I realized, wow, these people are never going to, they're stuck in this way of thinking. There's nothing I can do or say. So that was it. I left.
Did you have friends there? Did you have to leave friends?
Yes.
Did this socially...
It was ugly.
Yeah.
It was ugly. I was getting text messages from people saying, Why are you leaving over this? The devil is guiding you. And I just said, this isn't, it's just not correct. And I remember trying to debate it with people, and it was just a lost cause. There was nothing I could say. They were convinced that this Bible was perfect, and that was the end of it. And that opened me up to sort of looking at things more objectively and looking for evidence of things, looking for and when I started looking at early Christianity itself, because then I started asking myself, is it true that maybe the Protestants were wrong, and maybe the Catholics / Orthodoxy is the true church? And I entertained this question for a little bit, and that's when I started looking up, okay, what is the oldest text that I can find about the early church? And I discovered Saint Hippolytus, Saint Irenaeus, Justin Martyr, Saint Epiphanius. And these 4 church fathers wrote extensively on the schisms of the 1st century and 2nd century church. They wrote about Simon Magus versus Peter. They wrote about Saturnius. They wrote about Carinus. They wrote about what's his name? Basilides, another Gnostic. They wrote about this Nicene preacher. They wrote about Valentinus and Harpocrates. And these are names of people who were part of the church in the late 1st to early 2nd century, the middle of the 2nd century, who were called heretics for some reason.
And you read these texts.
And I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why. What were they? I want to know I don't care if they're heretic or not. I want to know what every single Christian wrote and what they thought and what they said. So I started digging into all these like Gnostic texts and all these different, what are they called? There's a group called the Elkosites. They were like Jewish Parthians. Then there was the, hell is the name of them? Ebionites. Ebionites were like, they were followers of the Mosaic law. They still circumcised. They followed the Torah, but they also thought Jesus was the Messiah, but not God. I wanted to hear their arguments. I wanted to hear all different types of Christians, and I was just looking at these early Christian groups and comparing and contrasting. And then I thought to myself, that was the earliest Christians were way different than the Christians of the 4th, 5th, 6th century. And that's when I started getting into the whole question of maybe the Gnostics are the original Christians.
In what way were they different? How do they differ the 1st century from the 4th, 5th century?
So depending on what group we're looking at, for example, these Ebionites or these followers of John the Baptist called the Mandaeans, they had a different doctrine, whereas they felt let's stick with the Ebionites.
Sure.
The Ebionites were a group of early Christians who did not neglect what the Old Testament was saying. They took very seriously Deuteronomy and Numbers, Leviticus and Exodus and the laws that were in there. But they thought Jesus was the Messiah. And I just thought to myself, that is interesting because what they're saying sort of lines up with Old Testament theology better than Christians today. Christians today make up they had this story in the book of Acts where Peter had a dream randomly. And this dream says that you can eat whatever you want. God made food for everybody. But that's interesting because that contradicts what God tells Moses in Exodus. God strictly forbids pork, shellfish, certain acts of strangulation of food, like if you strangle the animal before you cook it, preparation stuff. Now, why would God be so strict with Moses about how to make food, what foods to eat, what foods not to eat, make sure you circumcise on the 8th day, all this stuff? Why would he be so very strict about this? And then all of a sudden, this guy named Peter gets a dream and that all gets canceled out? And I just remember thinking to myself, that something's not right here. This particular book right here in Exodus is coming from the words of God himself, telling Moses to do these things and not do these things. This book over here in Acts, it's not even in Hebrew, it's in Greek, and it's not even from the words of mouth, it's from some guy who had a dream. Now, think about, I'm thinking like an Ebionite now. I'm thinking, if I was Jewish, who am I going to listen to? The word of God to Moses? or some random guy who had a dream? I'm going with Moses. And so I started thinking maybe the Ebionites were onto something. And I also started reading Christians on a whole other side of the spectrum. For example, these Basilidians or these Carpocratian Gnostics who had a different doctrine where they thought maybe that Jesus was this guy who became so enlightened that he was able to think like God and actually act in the world according to what God would do. So he became begotten by God through this sort of enlightenment.
Tuned in.
Right. So he became an apotheosis, and they taught that the baptism was the birth, that his flesh didn't matter. He was spiritually on par with God. And I thought that's an interesting way of looking at it. And I just started comparing and contrasting all these groups and got really fascinated with these early Christian groups called the Gnostics, Ebionites. And sort of like, what it did was it sort of gave me something to look at Christianity in a different light. And I took it very seriously for about a year or two, where I thought that the early Christian history was not what we're taught. And I still think that, but I ended up just stopped believing in Christianity altogether at some point.
Well, I would think studying all these different Christianities that are around during the 1st and 2nd century, at the end, eventually you got to take one step back and go, wait, how many groups are there? And you all believe in these different things. And that was so close to the time of Jesus, and you guys are fighting. And it's like, what are we doing here?
That's right.
What are we doing here?
That's exactly where my head was at. It was like, when we look at early Christianity, it's chaotic. Like, we think, I've said this a bunch of times in different parts of the internet, but I'll say it again because this is important. We like to think that today Christians are more divided than ever. That you have the Mormons over here, the Catholics over here, evangelicals over there, Orthodoxy over there,
Calvinists over there.
Calvinists, right? They all disagree on major theological things. But really, Christians today, Mormons and Catholics today, have more in common than the earliest Christians did closer do you get to Jesus. The closer you get to Jesus, the more far apart Christians actually are. There are some Christians who thought the God of the Old Testament was evil.
Yeah, Marcion, right?
Marcion thought there was two gods.
Yeah.
That there was the God that Jesus was the son of, who was good and perfect and all-knowing. And then there was this other God called the creator God, who was given power to create matter. He has power over matter, but he's jealous and angry and
commits genocide.
Yeah, all that stuff. So you have all these.
Didn't he make the Old Testament and New Testament?
He's the first Christian on record to put together an actual Bible.
A canon.
Marcion was.
Marcion was.
Marcion.
And I think he divided it by saying the Old Testament was the old God and the New Testament was the new God. Is that right?
That's one theory, yeah.
Okay,
that's
one theory at least.
There's a lot, because we lost Marcion's text. All we have is what people say about him.
Other critiques.
So we have to piece it
Tertullian
together.
And these guys, right?
Yeah, we have to piece it together using what we think is likely, what we think is not likely. And some people come to that conclusion that
we don't know that for sure, though.
Yeah.
And when did you said Marcion was the first Christian to put together like a New Testament basically?
Yes,
a canon.
It was Luke.
When was that?
It was early 2nd century.
So it's like over 100 years after Jesus died.
Yes,
ish,
right around there.
Okay.
Probably exactly 100 years, right in the 130 or something like that. And before that, though, what you had individual gospels floating around. So you might go to a church in Ephesus, and they might have the Gospel of John with some prophets. Maybe they have Isaiah scroll. Maybe they have something else. And that would be in Greek too. Or you went to another church and they might have the Epistle to the Hebrews with, I don't know, Luke.
And maybe some other letters that aren't in our canon.
Yeah, exactly. They had
other ones
some sort of apocryphal story. Maybe they had a Gnostic text floating in there. Those were floating around early on. So depending on where you went, like in Rome, Valentinus was one of these Gnostics. In the year 136 AD, Valentinus was in Rome, and he was running for Bishop of Rome, which would have made him a pope under our definition of what pope is, Bishop of Rome. He was the second highest votes. He was very close. According to Epiphanius, he lost a very slim election to another saint or another pope, bishop. And I think it's Anicetus, I think his name was. Bishop Anicetus. And he would have been on our list of popes. Now, this is one of these heretic Gnostics who have all these crazy theological differences that we find today. For example, Valentinus thought that God was a triad called the Father, the Logos, and Sophia. And he also taught that all this like gematria, numerology, he thought Pythagoras was divinely inspired. He considered Pythagoras one of the prophets, one of the old prophets. He had all these wild, insane theological ideas that are not Christian, are not Catholic today.
Yeah.
But he was in Rome.
He was almost a pope.
He was almost the Pope.
He got some votes to be a pope.
And exactly. So that tells you that these Gnostics were not different from the Christians. They were part of the church.
They were voting.
Up until right around 150, I would say. I would say the first church schism happens around 150. And that's when Justin Martyr starts debating these Gnostics, and they start to split up. And then by the end of the 2nd century, then you have a clear separation between Gnostic and Orthodox by then.
Can you give me a definition of Gnostic?
So
Yeah,
Gnostic,
it's kind of broad.
Where did it start? What did they believe?
yeah, the Gnostics are it's an umbrella term because you can't really use that term for everybody. But what it means is, what I mean by that is the term Gnostic gets thrown around at every heretic.
It's applied everywhere.
Yeah, it's like if you're a heretic, you're a Gnostic. But really, what an actual Gnostic is, it means knower. Gnosis in Greek is knower, to know. And so there were Christians who thought, Basilides was one of them. Basilides said that Gnosis was higher than pistis. Pistis means faith in Greek. So they thought that salvation didn't come through faith. It came from divine knowledge of God. To know God is to become higher and become like God. So there was a very important doctrine for certain groups. Basilides was one of them. Carpocrates was one of them. There's a guy named the Nicene preacher who styled himself as a Gnostic.
It's almost like Eastern, it's almost like Buddhists a little bit.
Yes.
Enlightenment.
Yes, Enlightenment. Exactly.
It's almost like a Buddhist version of Christianity.
Yeah, very much.
In a way.
There's a lot of overlap between the Buddhists and the Gnostics, very much. People have written about this too. And even in Paul's epistles, you get a lot of talk about gnosis. He compares gnosis to the gifts of spirit and the revelation, and he puts gnosis up on a high level of salvation. So even Paul is big into that. Then there's another letter from Paul. It's attributed to Paul, but scholars think someone else wrote it. It's in the letters of Timothy, 1st and 2nd Timothy, where all of a sudden Paul is anti-gnosis. So in some of his letters, you get all this, like in Corinthians and Romans, you get all this like positive stuff about gnosis. And then all of a sudden in the letters of Timothy, he's saying, puffed up with gnosis. Look at these, get away from these people who are puffed up with gnosis. So what scholars think, and I agree with them, they think that Paul or somebody was writing in Paul's name to do anti-Gnostic propaganda. And we even think we know who wrote it. We think it's Irenaeus, because the exact same 5 words in a row that they use, Irenaeus uses in another text. It looks word for word the same sentence. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what words he uses.
That is so crazy to think about. One man 2,000 years ago just writing letters and
in Paul's name,
through stylometry or like analyzing writing styles.
Yeah.
Just he wrote 2 different letters, and now 2,000 years later, we're kind of like, I think that guy wrote both of those, and it makes sense. It tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Gnostics, people who really thought that salvation came from knowledge rather than faith. Now, the term gets applied to a lot of different groups of Christians who didn't call themselves Gnostic. The Valentinians didn't call themselves Gnostics. They get called Gnostic because they have some doctrines that align with what other people call Gnostic. So the term basically gets thrown around for anyone who's a heretic. But when you look at the history, you find out that some of these so-called Gnostics, while they were alive, were not heretics. When Valentinus died, I want to say he died around, I don't know, probably in 150s, 160s, something like that. When he died, he didn't think I'm a heretic and everyone hates me. He went to his grave thinking he was saved in Christ, going to heaven as a Christian. And then decades later, people start writing about him as a heretic, and then he gets condemned. Isn't that interesting? Like
Posthumously.
yeah, he dies thinking I did everything right. I'm a good Christian. I'm going to heaven. But then now we look in the modern times, we're all looking back at him and going, that heretic. It's like, no, he was well loved in his circles. Same with the Carpocratians. They were in Alexandria. This was a big school in Alexandria in Christianity, where people would go and learn Christianity from Carpocrates or Basilides. And so another one is Simon Magus. It looks like his whole history gets subverted in the book of Acts, because Simon Magus is a weird story. You hear all the sources that talk about him. He's like this big Christian mystic from Samaria who goes to Alexandria, he goes to Rome, and he sets up his different schools of Christianity. And then in the book of Acts, it portrays him like not evil, but it portrays him as like very greedy, trying to buy the Holy Spirit with money. And he gets saved and everything's fine. And it's like, but it's a weird portrayal of Simon Magus. He gets saved by Peter. And there's another text that's written a little bit later in like the late 2nd century, maybe even the early 3rd century, where all of a sudden he's just completely evil, wicked. They're comparing him to Satan. They say that him and Peter had a duel where Simon Magus flew up in the air and was like, look, I have the Holy Spirit. Look how good I am. I can fly. That's how good I am. That's how good of a Christian I am. And St. Peter just takes his, I think he's holding a wand, and he zaps him down and kills him because like, no, my powers are better than you. They have like a magic duel in this story. And like, so now they're portraying Simon Magus as like the epitome of evil. So it looks like what happened is, it looks like over time, and by the way, when you look at these early Christians like Clement of Rome and Papias, some of these early 2nd century Christians, they don't say anything about Simon Magus being evil or bad. It's all after the late 2nd, early 3rd century when all of a sudden Simon Magus is evil. And it looks to me that people, as Christianity progressed, Christians decided to sort of like hone in on what doctrines they wanted to be important to them. Which doctrines are going to be palatable to have it for a church that's going to be big. And some of these Gnostic ideas lost. And then they start writing these polemics against these Gnostics, Irenaeus, Hippolytus, and so forth, Epiphanius. And they start writing these polemics against the Gnostics. And now we look back at history as the Gnostics were bad and orthodoxy was good. And it's a very skewed way of looking at it. It's a very
like revisionist history.
And it's like we're looking back and going in hindsight and looking through the eyes of the victor and letting them tell us what happened instead of letting the evidence tell us what happened.
It's like a reverse pardon.
Yeah.
It's like, rather than saying it's all good after they die, like actually,
you need to be condemned for this.
They were pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, even though everyone loved them all the way up to the end.
Yeah.
When you're digging into all this early church history, what did you come to the conclusion on of like whether or not Jesus existed?
I have a weird view on that because that's another thing that sort of guides me out of Christianity, was looking at the evidence for Jesus. And what I found was there's not a lot of evidence for him at all. So he supposedly lived from around 4 BC to around 30 CE AD. And we have Jewish authors from that time period. Not only do we have Jewish authors from that time period, they wrote about stuff that was going on in that time period. They wrote about people from Jerusalem. They wrote about governors of Syria, governors of the Galilee. Prime examples, Philo of Alexandria. He was born around 20 BCE. He lived all the way to around 50 AD. So his whole lifespan engulfs the life of Jesus. He was already 20 years old when Jesus was born, and he lived 20 years after the death of Jesus, and he was writing in the 40s. So he's writing about Caligula, who was the emperor of the Romans in the 40s. He writes about Caligula coming to Jerusalem, coming to Alexandria. He writes about the various governors of Judea. He mentions them by name. He mentions political events happening in Jerusalem. He's talking about all this stuff. He's Jewish himself. He even believes in the idea of a son of God. So Philo writes about the Son of God will be the Messiah, and he will be the Logos, the Word of God. He says all this stuff. You're like, he almost sounds like a Christian. So if anybody would know about Jesus, it's him. If there really was a guy who was going around performing miracles and died and resurrected, and then in Matthew's account, when Jesus is on the cross, it says that zombies came out of the ground. It says that the graves were opened up and the dead were raised up, and they were walking around Jerusalem for the whole night while Jesus was on the cross. If that happened, this guy would know about it. He doesn't say anything about Jesus.
Wait, where is that written? The zombies?
Philo of Alexandria.
No, in Matthew it talks about the zombies.
You're talking about the zombies.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Matthew.
okay.
Matthew's gospel. The only gospel that mentions this. So it's like, okay, now this is an argument from silence. I know, I get this. This does not mean Jesus didn't exist, but it definitely points to the fact that he probably didn't do these miracles. He wasn't well known. His fame didn't reach far and wide. He wasn't blessing 5,000 people and giving them food and miracle fishes and bread. That didn't happen because this would have been picked up by writers like Philo.
Did Philo write about other messianic figures or other, like, what did he write about?
He does. He writes about the Essenes. He writes about like people in Israel doing specific things and things actually. He's writing about the events in the time period. He just doesn't mention Jesus. He writes about the Essenes. He writes about the Pharisees. He writes about the Sadducees. He writes about the different governors, Herod Agrippa, who was the governor of the Galilee where Jesus lived. He writes about everybody that's from that period except for Jesus. That's a problem. Like I said, it doesn't mean he didn't exist, but it definitely points to the idea that this stuff probably didn't happen. You also have another writer named Pliny the Elder who traveled that part of the world all the way until the 70s, and he met with the Essenes, and he writes about miracle workers. He writes about people who were deified as God men. Doesn't mention Jesus. Forgets about that one. So again, these are arguments from silence, but they attest to that this was not he probably wasn't this super famous miracle working sage that the Gospels make him out to be. Which makes me think, if he did exist, the Gospels are kind of legendary. They're kind of taking a real person and then they're applying all these legends to him because this is normal of the time period. The stories of Alexander the Great have him doing miracles, being the son of God, doing all these wonderful things and flying up at the air and meeting dragons and drinking from the fountain of youth. That's part of the Alexander story. All these legends that didn't happen, but Alexander's still a real person. Same with Caesar Augustus. Stories about Caesar Augustus healing the sick and fighting against nature and stopping all the storms and winds. And when he was born, there was a star in the sky that signified the king of the world was born. That's in the stories of Augustus in the 1st century. So there's a genre of literature in the time period of real people who really lived with legendary lives attached to them.
It's like magical realism, kind of.
That to me is probably what happened with Jesus, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't exist at all. I'm not saying he didn't exist at all, but I don't think there's enough to go up to conclude he's all made up. I think it's possible that there was a guy named Jesus, but
Yeah, if you had to steelman that, if you had to try to defend the position that there was a real Jesus, what would be the best argument you could put forward?
I would say that there was a guy born in the Galilee who from the Galilee who got a lot of people to his political faction, was crucified by the Romans, and then when he died, people applied the suffering motif from Isaiah's gospel or Isaiah's book in the Old Testament, which has this whole suffering Messiah thing. And they applied these motifs from the Old Testament to him. Another one is in the Old Testament in Genesis, Isaac carries his cross to his own death, where his father sacrifices him. And then he gets saved in the end. But the point is, you got Jesus carrying his cross to his own death, where he's going to be sacrificed for the Father. So what you see like all these motifs from the Old Testament being applied to Jesus. But as far as trying to steel man why I know he existed, there's no physical evidence. There's no archaeological evidence. He didn't write anything down. The apostles didn't write anything down. First Peter, First John, those are written by other people in their names. Scholars think this. Now you might ask a Christian, they'll go, of course Peter wrote Peter. But the scholarly consensus is no. These are written by people in the 2nd century. So if we go by the scholarly consensus, none of the apostles wrote anything down. Paul says there were 500 eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection in his letter, Corinthians. None of those 500 people, we don't know any of their names. None of them wrote down, yes, I saw this today. It's just Paul telling you 500 people saw it. Paul wasn't there himself. So we have a secondary account mentioning primary witnesses. That's not a primary source. Secondary. All we have to go off of for Jesus' life are secondary accounts who weren't there. Nobody who was actually there wrote a thing down. And we don't have a single piece of physical archaeological evidence, an artifact, a piece of wood from the cross. All of that is all stuff from medieval periods, medieval Christians coming up with. We have the true cross. No, I had the true cross. They had a whole market of foreskins in medieval Europe that they thought was the foreskin of Jesus. Whole market of them. Hundreds of these foreskins floating around Europe that they thought was Jesus' foreskin from him being circumcised on the 8th day. But the point, the fact of the matter is, none of this is legit. It's all people later writing about this stuff. So again, it doesn't mean he didn't exist, but it means we're dealing with really shoddy evidence about him being a real person.
Yeah, I can see why people in the church are so keen on the Shroud of Turin right now.
Yeah,
They really want that to prove
they
something.
want that to be real, and most scholars, 99% of scholars do reject it. There's a few that think, oh, and then when you look into these few that do think it's real, they're Christians. They're involved in churches. They're scholars too, but they're Christians and they're biased, and it's fine. Everyone's biased. But the point of the fact of the matter is that Shroud of Turin does not show up in any primary source until the 13th century. And then it just pops up in the sources. We have the shroud. It's called, so yeah, we have it it's in Turin. But there's no one mentions shrouds before that. The shroud is like a thing that happened in the medieval period. And there was hundreds of these shrouds floating around. That one was the best done, though. The one that we call the Shroud of Turin, you got to hand them credit. Whoever put that together did a good job. They made it very convincing.
Yeah, well, maybe it came off someone that was flogged. Like maybe it came off somebody that suffered like that, you know?
Yeah, it's very possible that someone else had this thing happen to them and they just kind of, hey, look at that shroud. It looks like Jesus or something. Like, maybe something like that happened. I don't know.
Do you remember the moment that you were doing all of this research and a thought came into your mind or whatever that kind of, like you said, it's not true?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm surprised you asked me that. The last time I ever went to church. Well, actually, I went to church recently when I was in Greece to film for an Orthodox church for a documentary I'm doing. Before that, the last time I went to church as a Christian, I was at a Pentecostal church, and the weekend before that, I was hanging out with the pastor, and I was asking him stuff we're talking about right now. I was asking about the Gnostics in the first century and the evidence for Jesus. And we're talking, and I was like, I just don't know, man. How do we know we have the right one? And he goes, he's like, have you been baptized in this new church yet? I was like, no, because I was baptized in a different church. He's like, maybe you just need to calm down and stop thinking about all this stuff and just get baptized. I was like, okay, this Sunday we're gonna get baptized. I go to church on Sunday. He takes me, I go in the water with this pastor. He baptizes me. And as I'm coming up from the water, I remember thinking to myself, I don't believe in this anymore.
As you're coming
As
out
I'm
of
coming
the water.
out of the water of a baptism.
That was your moment.
That was my moment.
Oh my gosh.
It was the weirdest, most awkward feeling I've ever had. Because I felt like I was forcing myself to believe it. And I realized that I didn't right then and there.
It's like the moment the Holy Spirit's supposed to set in, it left you.
It was the opposite.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like, because I went in, it was a very awkward day. And I remember getting in there and going, I'm gonna make myself believe this again. I know it's true. It's gotta be, I want it to be true so bad. I was like, please, I remember praying, being like, God, just make me believe again. Got in the water, jumped in, did the baptism, came out of the water. I put my hands up like, yeah, like everyone's cheering for me. But in the back of my head, I was like, I don't believe this. I was like, I do not think this is true anymore. Never went back.
Did you lose more friends then?
Yeah.
What is that like? What were the,
It
what
sucks.
was that? What, do they just ostracize you?
Yes.
What was the,
Because when you start talking, you go, hey man, are you going to come to church this week? And I'm, no. And then it's like, you just got baptized again. You're not going to come? And then after a couple of weeks of not showing up, you start getting those messages. Hey man, are you coming anymore? And then finally I'm honest and say, no, I don't believe it. And then it's like, it's a weird position because I'm trying to be nice to them and I don't want to like drag them with me because I know this makes them happy. I know like I'm talking to people who I know this brings them joy.
And you had benefited from the belief.
And I benefited from it too. So I know this. So I don't want to, I want to go, no, it's not true. And you should believe what I think.
you're not proselytizing your
not
your
doing-
unbelief.
I'm not doing that to them. And I remember just being like, this conversation was so awkward because I don't want them to think what I'm thinking, but I want them to know that I don't believe it either. Also, I want to be honest. So it's a weird, and I remember just being like, hey man, I know you love this and I get it. I think there might be some truth to it, but I'm just not into it right now. Like something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I tried
to bow out.
tried to just be nice. And that was it.
So did you make new friends? Is that how it works? Like what did you I
I
guess your
s-
community fell away and
Yeah, I started to started watching a lot of skeptics, like YouTube skeptic channels.
yeah.
Like flirted with atheism for a while. And then I really dug deep into ancient Greek mythology, Greek religion, Roman religion. Became very fascinated by the idea of the muse, which
Yeah.
is like the divine inspiration of the poets and all that stuff, and music and art and literature. Reading Nietzsche, reading Carl Jung, reading Alan Watts. And I sort of got my spirituality back, if you call it that. I'm not an atheist. So, but I did end up becoming friends with a lot of people online who were in the skeptic communities who were fighting against Christianity publicly. Met Derek I started watching Myth Vision. And I became a Patreon for Myth Vision. And I saw what he was doing. And I was like, I want to start doing my own channel like this. And I started my own channel. And then it started taking off pretty quick. And then I ended up, so I became friends with like the whole skeptic online movement of people who are mixtures of pagans and atheists, that type of corner of the internet. There's a weird overlap of pagans and atheists online.
Really?
Because they're unified by the idea that this world that we're in is dominated by Christianity and Islam.
The
and
enemy of my
Judaism.
enemy is my friend kind of idea?
Yeah. So
Without such harsh language, but
well, it's true because of the atheists and the agnostics also see the problem of having a world that's just dominated by this dogma of biblical theology, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. And these pagans who want their ancestral cults back, they want their You know, pagans living in England, they want their Anglo-Saxon paganism back, or Nordic mythology. They want their Odin and their Freya. And then pagans living in Italy or Greece, they want their Greek mythology. They want their Greek temples back. They want their Roman temples back. But we're dominated by Christian thought, and they're looked at as demon worshippers. So the atheists are demonic atheists sacrificing to Satan, babies or whatever, and the pagans are getting the same charges at them too. So they sort of become united, as in we're all heathens together. We're all outlaws. We're all, we're the heathens. Like that's kind of what happened. So
We're all the black sheep, kind of. It's a crew of black sheep.
Yeah. So I kind of I started becoming friends with a lot of people who were pagan, who were heathens, and who were atheists, and who were skeptical of the Bible, that type of stuff. I also started talking to a lot of scholars because I'm interviewing scholars for my channel. Became friends with a lot of scholars too. So that became the new friends.
Why do you have to, this may be a dumb question, why do you have to stop going to a church just because you stop believing? If the community and the people are your friends, isn't that valuable enough without the belief?
I think I didn't stop believing instantly at that moment that I mentioned. I think I was already kind of checking out slowly. And I was continuing to go because I liked it. So I do think there's probably a lot of people who can say that they go to church because they like the benefits of it, but they probably deep down know there's something not right here. Like they probably don't think it's all 100% correct. Or maybe Jesus didn't rise from the dead, and maybe they just don't believe in it, but they do like the idea of going to church and having community. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. I think people should get their community wherever they can get it.
Where do you go search for it outside of the church after you leave? For me, I mean, in my brain, it's like the bars. You go to the bars, yeah, basically.
That's a big one for people. But I think if you can't do that, you go to the internet. You go online. That's kind of what I did. I went online. We found all these internet communities and Discords and YouTube channels and Patreon groups. That's one thing about today is the internet brings people to their community pretty quickly.
What'd you learn about Greek and Roman religions?
So I started to realize through studying the Gnostics that a lot of these Gnostics were attributing a lot of the ideas of Christianity. For example, the Valentinians attribute the Christian thinking to Greek thought. So the Valentinians, the Carpocratians, and a few other groups thought that Plato, Pythagoras, Aristotle, Thales, those guys, these are pre-Socratics and post-Plato thinkers who were teaching ideas about theology and philosophy. And there's a whole unified branch of philosophy called Middle Platonism. And it's basically Stoicism plus Platonism. And it's like this universal thought of philosophy that is dominating the first century. And Christianity seems to come out of that way of thinking. So when I started to think about Christianity, why is it so popular? What's so good about it? And I started to take apart, look under the hood and look what are the nuts and bolts of Christianity. You find that it's not just this Jewish fulfillment of messianic promises. There's a lot of Greek thought interwoven in it. Ideas of salvation, of sin. You find that in Orphism. The Orphics taught that in the beginning of time, Zeus was going to impregnate the queen of the underworld named Persephone. So you have Zeus, who's the king of the heavens of Olympus, and Persephone, who is the queen of the underworld. And there's going to be a royal marriage between the underworld and the heavens. This is the start of a new golden age, if you will. And he gets her pregnant. And Persephone gives birth to this child called Zagreus. And Zagreus is a fruit god. It's baby Dionysus. He is a fruit god, a vegetation god. a God of life, a God of the growing and swelling of fruits. That's what Zagreus is. The word Zagare means life. Zagreus. And he's the prince of Olympus. He's going to be the next king of Olympus after Zeus. He's next in line. His mother's the queen of the underworld, and his father's the king of Olympus. He has it all in his hands. He's the divine child.
He's the heir.
He's the heir. The Titans, under the behest of Hera. Now, Hera is the jealous wife of Zeus, who's jealous of Persephone. She tells the Titans to go and kill Zagreus. And they go, and they first entice him with little toys, like he's a baby, and they show him toys, and he's looking at the toys, and he gets enticed by them. Then they rip him apart, limb from limb, and they ritually eat him and sacrifice him. And then they eat the fruit of knowledge. He's the fruit god. And this is the beginning of time. And these Titans eat the fruit. And then Zeus gets so angry that they ate the fruit god that he sends a deluge and wipes out all of the cosmos. And he takes the bodies of these Titans who just ate the fruit, and he rips them apart, and he uses them to construct the material world, because this is a pre-spiritual world that I'm talking about. So he takes the Titans and he creates the material world. And because of this, everything that lives on this world that we live in has Titan flesh. Our flesh is all Titan. And our spirit is Zagreus or Dionysus. So we are half spirit and half flesh. And because of our flesh, we have eternal sin, primordial sin. And the only way to be saved from our primordial sin is to be initiated into the mysteries of Dionysus.
The Dionysian rituals.
Yes. And then Dionysus is reborn after the cosmos is redone. He's reborn through another mother, Semele, and becomes Dionysus. Because after the Titans killed Zagreus, Athena took the heart of Zagreus. They didn't eat his heart. And she takes it and she brings it to Zeus. Zeus turns it into a potion, gives it to Semele. She gives birth to Dionysus. He's a resurrected god. He's resurrected. So the reason why I brought all this up is because what you can see this in Christianity. You have a resurrected God who gives you salvation if you believe in him. We inherit the sins of Adam and Eve who ate the fruit. In Greek mythology, in Orphism, you inherit the sins of the Titans who ate the fruit god. But our way out of this mess of matter, this world that we're condemned to die because we're mortal. The way out of it is to be initiated in Dionysus, be saved by Dionysus. So I thought I turned this on silent.
Oh, it's all good.
That's weird. All right, you can cut that part out. So because of that, I can see Christianity not just borrowing from Old Testament motifs, but I can see them borrowing from the greater Greek and Roman world of theology. This idea of salvation and sin and all this weird stuff that you find in New Testament that's not really in the Old Testament, you find it in the Greek world. So that's when I started realizing Christianity is not just coming out of Judaism, it's coming out of the broader Greco-Roman cultural milieu. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff about that, like the ideas of heaven and hell and purgatory. You find that in Roman paganism. In Roman paganism, you have this idea of the genius, where it's just like your ancestral spirits, and they go up into the heavens. And then you have the lemures, who go down into the underworld. And then there's another group called the lemures, who are spirits of like the middle ground. They're like in like a purgatory state. And then there's another group called the Inferni, and they're down into the underworld because they're being punished. So you can see there's three states: the infernal, the middle ground, and then the heaven realm. So Christianity is not just taking Old Testament and making a New Testament out of it. It's also incorporating the broader Greco-Roman culture itself. It's trying to fulfill everything. And in fact, there's a Christian, one of these Gnostics called the Nicene preacher, who was really famous in the 2nd century, middle 2nd century, around 150 AD. And he was basically mixing paganism with Christianity. And he was saying that Jesus was the true version of Attis, Adonis, Osiris, and Dionysus. And that he was those gods are all mythology, but they weren't in vain. They were pointing to Jesus. They were just like the Old Testament prophesies Jesus, Greek mythology also prophesies Jesus. And that was what the Nicene preacher taught. That was in his theology. You can see this reflected in later church thought too. Eusebius, church historian of the 4th century, wrote a book called The Preparation for the Gospel. And in this book called The Preparation for the Gospel, he goes through various mythologies: Phoenician mythology, Zoroastrian mythology, Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology. And he says that they were all divinely inspired by the muse. But what the muse was trying to do, it was trying to get everyone ready for Christ. So this idea of paganism being incorporated into the whole story of Christianity was in Orthodox Christian thought in the 4th century. And yeah, so trying to think of any other examples of this being what's his name? Trying to think of the author from the 20th century, Lewis.
C.S. Lewis?
C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis was another example of a Christian who thought this way. He thought that the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians and the early pagans also had a little spark of divinely inspired messages that were pointing to Jesus. So this idea is not that crazy or heretical when you see that this was kind of a common idea that you find all throughout history.
So do you have peace now?
Yeah, I do. I believe in the muse. I believe that we are inspired. I think there is a purpose to all this. And I don't claim to know exactly what it all is. I'm not dogmatic. I'm always changing my ideas of the world. I'm not stuck on this has to be true because this one book said so. So now I'm going to try to find everything I can and discard everything that I don't like to make this true. I'm constantly updating my software. I'm constantly updating when I get new information. My political views are always changing. My views on science are always changing. My views on history are always changing as I'm growing and learning more and more. And in a lot of ways, I am a Gnostic. I am a knower. And I do think you're saved by knowledge. I do think the more we know, the better we can be. I think in a Promethean way, as humanity keeps building more knowledge to our previous knowledge base, and we built every scholar that comes along, and a newly minted PhD comes along, and they write a dissertation, and that dissertation is challenging the status quo in some way. I don't know if people know this, but in order to get a PhD and be a doctor, you have to write a dissertation that challenges a previously thought idea. So academia, I think, is good. And I think people need to give academia more credit, even though I do challenge a lot of stuff in academia. But it's constantly updating what we know all the time. It's constantly growing and growing and growing. And I do think eventually humans are going to reach a place almost like godhood in a way. I do think that humans are reaching towards some sort of place in the far future and I think this is what we're meant to do. Like, I think we're supposed to do this. I think humans are supposed to keep building and keep growing and keep enduring and keep persevering and keep building our knowledge. For whatever reason, we'll find out. Humans will find out. I might not be there to see it, but at least I was part of the whole mission. We're all part of it. We're all just kind of building and building and building until eventually some people will figure it out, whether it's a million years from now or something. Hopefully we don't get wiped out on the way.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Global cataclysms.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but I think it's all meant to be. I think there's something to all this, and I think there is something out there that inspires people to do things. And I don't think it's one particular force behind everything. I think there's multiple forces. I believe in the multiplicity of the world. That's why I think polytheism makes a lot of sense. I do think there's multiple forces at bay that are kind of contradicting each other, which, if you think about it, the whole problem of evil does not make any sense under monotheism. Because if there's one God in control of everything, then evil is his fault too. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But if you have multiple forces at work, then all of a sudden there's nothing to really blame, but the multiplicity of things is doing it what it does.
Have you ever had any sort of like mystical experience or ego death or whatever term you'd like to use?
Yeah, I had a really big phase of DMT for about a couple of years. I used to make DMT a lot.
You made it?
I used to make it, yeah.
Whoa.
And yeah, I had a lot of very spiritual experiences on DMT, which is probably why I'm not an atheist, because of DMT. DMT sort of opens you up to something that's so remarkable. It's so hard to explain. It's so bizarre. Like, it's like the Overton window of reality gets shifted, and you're just like, it just makes you think, like, is this all just in my head? Like, I don't know. The point is, I've had a couple experiences on DMT where I've met what I can only describe as some sort of divine entity.
Yeah.
And
have you been following that research that's come out where they take that laser cross? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I tried that.
Did you?
Me and Danny Jones.
So for those who haven't heard it, there's you buy a laser that kind of makes a cross, and you can make it blurry to make it wider. And apparently, if you take DMT and look at this laser, you can see code behind it. And everybody, 100% of the people everywhere, whether you've done DMT, never done DMT, whether you know this information that I'm saying right now, or whether someone just says, hey, smoke this and look at that, everyone sees the exact same thing. And it's some sort of like, everybody's thinking it's maybe like the code behind our universe.
I was in Tampa Bay with Danny Jones, Steve, and Jason Reza Giorgiani was also there too. They just wrapped up filming for Jason Giorgiani's podcast.
Oh. And
I just got there. We were going to go out for dinner. He pulled out the laser. He filmed it too. He pulled out the laser and he told me to take 3 or 4 good rips of DMT and look at the laser. And I did. And it looked like, the only way I can describe it, it looked like Sanskrit mixed with elf. You know, like the Lord of the Rings text? It looked like that. And I couldn't read it, but I can see it moving across the whole, and I can see through the wall, it felt like, into another dimension.
Yeah, they say it's behind it. It's behind the laser. It's like inches behind the laser.
And I remember when it wore off, I'm looking at the same laser that I just looked at for the last 5 minutes. That's how long it lasts for, 5 minutes.
Sure.
The last 5 minutes, I'm seeing through the wall into another dimension. Then the DMT wears off, and all of a sudden, I'm just looking at a little red laser again. With nothing there.
It's gone.
And I was like, what the hell? Why was that laser so different 5 minutes ago? The DMT does something to your brain where that laser looks like a dimension. Looks like you're looking through a dimension. It's true. I can tell you what they're saying about the laser is true. It was a wild, crazy experience that I tried right there.
Can you remember, would it be possible to go see some of that Elvish script, remember it, and then be able to write it down after DMT trip?
No. Because the thing about DMT is, it's like when you ever wake up from a dream and you had a crazy dream that felt really real. It felt like you remembered a bunch of things. But then as your day goes, you forget what the dream, you remember like one little split second of your dream.
Shakes off.
It shakes off.
Like an Etch-a-Sketch.
That's what DMT does. You experience it. It's amazing. It's mind-blowingly amazing. And then once you're done, you forget it. It's like you forgot it even happened.
That's wild.
It's really, it's like dreaming while you're awake.
Yeah.
I think it's the best way to describe it.
But that sort of gave you Okay, so that's where you've had some mystical experiences, and that's affected how you see the world, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes you to a new dimension, a new reality, a new something,
Yeah.
and gives you this idea that this is not all that there is.
Yeah, I do believe that. And I do think like I think once I realized that or came to that place in my mind, the idea of dying or, you know, not being super successful in life. Not saying I gave up or anything, but I don't necessarily like dread on those things anymore
Mm.
because I'm so lucky to be here. Like we nobody like just think about how crazy it is that there's something rather than nothing.
Yeah,
Like the idea, like why is this all happening?
totally.
It doesn't make any sense. And once you start to wrap your head around that, it's easier to stay content in life. To stay at it's something about that knowledge that just makes people more peaceful, I think.
And you think that the experience with DMT and the shifting of your like reality Overton window had something to do with helping you realize how lucky you are to be here?
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. I think so.
Do you think that that's what was going on in the Dionysian rituals?
Yes.
Because they always talked about,
Because they did psychedelics.
and you'd go to die before you die,
Yes.
is what they would say. And so they'd take this pilgrimage and do this ritual, and it's all secretive.
Yep.
But it seems like it was probably a psychedelic something.
Yeah, we know what it was called. It's called kukeon or
Oh, the
kaikion.
kaikion. That's right.
They drank this drink. It was a fermented some sort of had like mushrooms in it. It had a fermented grain or wheat. Ergot, yeah.
I think.
And they used ergot and there's like little mushrooms growing off of it and they put it in the drink. Sometimes they make it with wine, sometimes they make it with a different liquid, honey or something like that. And it was a psychedelic experience. And we don't know much about it because it was secret. It was
Right.
a secret experience, but we know some people wrote Cicero, Plato, different authors from
They all did
antiquity.
it.
They all got initiated.
They all did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all said the same thing, that your fear of death was gone because you knew that there was something after. It made it what the Eleusinian mysteries successfully did for society in antiquity was give people salvation from death before Christianity did that. Christianity comes along and claims that they brought that to the world. They already had that. And it's called the Eleusinian mysteries. Or the Samothracian mysteries as well did the same thing. And they did an experience. They had an experience. They had took some type of Eucharist, did some sort of baptism, and they came out of there feeling like they experienced something that no longer led them to fear death. That's salvation. When you stop fearing death, you're saved. That's it. You're saved.
That's what it means.
That's
To
what it
be
means.
Saved
Yeah.
is from death.
Exactly.
So when you don't fear it anymore, you're saved from it.
Yep. And I remember reading Cicero saying like, I could not imagine a world without these mysteries. That's how good they are. And we're living in a world without them. But we have Christianity now, but like, I don't know. I think the idea of salvation is not just a Jewish type of myth. I think it's more of a psychological, and I think it's beyond belief. I think it's beyond a set of facts that happen in the ancient. If you believe this X, Y, and Z happened about Jesus, then you'll go to eternal life. No, I don't think so. I think it's more about like attaining a level of knowledge, gnosis, maybe.
Awareness.
Yeah, awareness. And I think I don't know. I think if the gods are good, I don't think anyone's going to be damned. I just don't think that makes sense. Like eternity is so nobody can grasp how long eternity is. Imagine a God who's all knowing and all good condemning somebody to perish in fire because they picked the wrong religion.
I remember asking this
That's
question.
not a wise, good God.
I remember asking this question in 7th grade, and I just thought, man, like how long does a human live? 80 years, I don't know,
Yeah.
100 years, and you make some bad choices and you're a terrible person. And you got to go to hell forever? And I was
Right.
like, imagine being in hell for 10,000 years.
And
And
you're like,
then you're like, can I leave? This sucks.
you're like,
I'm sorry.
I spent
And they go,
99.9%.
no. Remember 10,000 years ago when you spent 80 years being a,
Yeah,
a
when
piece
you were
of garbage?
when you were a little baby.
Yeah. And then a
Remember?
million years goes by.
Imagine
And you go, hey,
Let's
please.
let's extract that out. Imagine a little baby who doesn't know anything makes a mistake and they spill their food on the ground. Imagine that they had to sit in one room for their entire 100-year life. And once they start getting older and becoming aware of what they did when they were a baby, imagine how messed up that would be. No, when you were a baby, you spilled your food
milk.
on the
Yeah.
you spilled your milk on the ground. You don't deserve to live. That's what they're basically saying about this God. That when we were little babies who had no idea what we were doing, we just get thrust into this universe and we pick the wrong one. Imagine a Muslim who's dedicated to Allah their entire life, and they pray every day and they don't do anything wrong, and they go to the Kaaba and they're praying to the Kaaba, and they think in their heart of hearts that Allah is the one true God. And then the Christian God's the real one. And they didn't believe in Christ, and they go to hell for eternity picking it doesn't make any sense. Or let's do the other way around. Imagine if Islam is the true religion. Islam's the true religion. And all these Christians that are going to church every week, and they feel in the heart of their hearts that they're doing the right thing. And they're like, okay, I'm going to church and I believe in God. I should go to heaven, right? Nope, you picked the wrong one. You deserve it. You deserve to perish in hell for eternity because you picked. It does not make sense. I think it's somewhere we made the wrong choice with religion by doing it as a way of choosing the right one. Whereas the ancients didn't do that. The ancients had all these different mystery cults and there are all these different flavors of religion, and they found salvation through different paths because nobody really knows. We're all trying to get there. And I think it's the attempt of trying to get there is what matters. And it's one thing about Christianity I agree with. If Jesus says that it's in your heart that you're measured, not what you do and not like how much you donate to the church, but how much is in your heart that you get measured. If that's true, if Jesus is right about that, then if we just happen to live in a reality where God is good and God is forgiving, then no one should have to worry about anything. Because at the end of the day, if a God is good and loving, there will be corrections in the next life. Things will be fixed. People will learn how to fix themselves. That type of thing. Like if you're raising a child, you don't condemn them for eternity for doing the wrong thing. You fix them. You teach them. You go, this is wrong. Let's do it better this time. And you never give up on them. You don't give up on them at some certain point.
Yeah.
If you don't get it right by 10 years old, after you turn 10, the day you turn 10, like the day you die, you're done. There's no more forgiveness. Like that's silly to me.
Yeah, I like to ask any parent, when do you give up on your child?
Right.
At what age, if your kid's a screw up, at what age do you say never? If you were to come to me from this point forward and you say, I'm so sorry for being a screw up, you would go, sorry, nope. And I've never had a parent, not a single, and this is anecdotal, but I've never had a parent go, yeah, they go, no, I'd always, forever. You always take your kid back, always.
Yeah, and what's even crazier about that is we're talking about the God who created us this way to begin with.
Yeah.
Who's all-knowing, that knew we were going to do all this.
Mm-hmm.
So it just doesn't make sense. And I think that's why I think people shouldn't worry too much about all that stuff and just try to be good, try to do the right thing, and things will work itself out.
And realize how dumb you're going to be. Because if the universe is billions of years old, billion, you can't even imagine the word billion. You live 100 years. I think if you live 10,000 years, you're going to be an idiot.
Yeah.
Like in the universal sense, how smart would you be after 200 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years? I'm still going to be an infant. Universally, I'm not going to know anything. Billions of years? Right. We don't have any context for that. And we're judging people that are 40.
Right.
As if they know something.
Right.
That's hilarious to me.
Yeah, I chalk it up to ignorance. I would say to anybody, it takes the blame off. It takes the judgment away. I go, of course, Nate, think of any person that you think is a bad person. And you go, if they only knew who God was, if they only knew that how much he loved them, if they only knew love, universal love, if they only knew that, they wouldn't do all of those things. And so they must not know. Because if they knew, they wouldn't do it.
Which is their burden to carry.
Totally.
They don't know
hell.
They don't know what love is like. Poor them. I shouldn't be judging them. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, you said you're constantly updating your software. And I really appreciate how much you study stuff. You clearly don't give up on stuff. You're like a dog just going after it. What is your software currently saying about the origin of humanity? Where did humans actually come from?
I think the evolution models are very much, they make a lot of sense. Like,
Yeah.
the evidence and all that. I'm not an expert, but I do think that there's truth to evolution and how we came about. And I think we live in a natural world. But as far as the natural world goes, I think that the world is governed naturally for a reason too. So even though things are natural and random and chaotic, I do think it's meant to be. So I think two things can be true at the same time. We can have a universe that's natural and random and has, survival of the fittest and all that stuff. But at the same time, it can be special, unique, divinely inspired, divine. I think two things. I think they can be true at the same time. So, yeah, as far as where we came from, I think evolution is more fascinating than creationism, because like there's this long lineage of life coming from the most simple thing to this. That is fascinating, rather than like poof, we're here, Adam and Eve. Like that's not impressive, really. What is impressive is knowing that life emerged from the waters, from nothing, from little tiny single cell organisms, and just kept growing and kept, like some fish decided that it wanted to try to get out of the water at some point or whatever. You know what I mean? And like over time it grows into something that has like feet and or an amphibian. That's mind blowing. There's something about that alone that makes me think that there's a guiding hand there. You know what I mean? Like there's some sort of like purpose to everything, that life can continue to thrive against all odds. It's pretty amazing, I think.
Yeah, like the fact that life seems to want to go on. I mean, we have central nervous systems. We have reproductive organs that really want to be plugged in to other reproductive organs.
Yeah.
We can kind of explain why we reproduce, but like I always think of a sea sponge. A sea sponge doesn't seem to have a central nervous system or a wiener. Why is it going on? Like what honestly, why does it reproduce? What's the point? I don't get it.
Yeah, what is the end goal of the sea sponge lineage?
I don't know, but it's doing
It's a mystery.
And it given the opportunity, it will always choose to multiply.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from?
Yes, it's like that's right there. What you just said, it shows you that there's some sort of force within us that wants us to survive. So to me, that tells me that there's some end game to all this, that there is some finish line somewhere, that some spirit within us is trying to get there, and I don't know what it is, but I just know there's something about it.
Sounds like you still have faith in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think faith is natural. I think we have to have faith in everything. You have to have this little level of faith for life itself, or faith that I'll make it in life, or faith that I'll be able to pay my bills, or faith that I'll be able to find somebody. All that stuff. Without that, we'd be lost. I think faith is part of our evolutionary mechanisms. So I think that's why it became so central to these religions, because it is a powerful thing. It's like a magical thing we can do, is to have faith. It does something. It can take us from one mindset to another mindset very fast. There's something about faith that works.
It can take take something off your eyes and lets you see a new perspective out of nowhere that you shouldn't have necessarily been able to concoct on your own, but now you can see this new perspective.
Yeah.
Draws you into a better future, kind of.
Yeah, the Stoics were like this too. The ancient Stoics were mind wizards. Their whole philosophy revolved around your mind, controlling your mindset, controlling hunger, not overeating, not things you can't control in life, not getting upset when somebody cuts you off. That's Stoicism, and there's a power to that. There's something about that. It's almost like a mental magic, if you think about it. If you could control your mind and control how you think and control your emotions, that's powerful.
What's so interesting is like how much we're studying meditation now, and when you get into deeper and deeper states of meditation, the brainwaves that we're putting off, they go from alpha to beta to theta to gamma, and we're actually showing this physiological response. But it's hard to do because you have to be able to turn off parts of your brain. And if you've never done it, And most people never have
That's
because
power.
we've never learned.
That's a magic power right
You
there.
don't even, and so the practice of meditation, if you want to think about it from a materialist standpoint, is the ability to drop your frequency that your brain is in down into a theta state. And that's measurable. You can actually buy all those things that it'll measure it for you. It'll tell you your outputs. And there's marked differences in all the other hormonal cascades of releases by getting into that theta state. And that's where the muse is, it turns out. In a lot of ways, that access to that creativity or that inspiration or that moment, because a lot of guys, they doze, right? And they sleep, and that's when the ideas come to them. Because in sleep, your brain drops into a different wave state. And so there is this ability to actually, I think that when we think of control your mind, we think of it in some like mental way, but if you could actually also think of it in a control your brain, actually turn it down. Because it's hard to stop thinking thoughts.
I
They
agree.
seem to just keep coming all the time. And there's an ability that you can build on. It's really interesting because it's sort of being validated by research now in showing these like meditative states.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why people have been doing that for thousands of years.
Yeah.
I mean, the Taoists, the Buddhists, the Hindus, they're into meditation. The Greeks were into meditation. There's a reason why. It's true, you know?
But speaking of thoughts that are always coming at you, what do you think of the Anunnaki?
I think it's interesting when you find the Anunnaki in these Sumerian and Babylonian sources. A lot of they seem to be analogous to the Greek Titans and the Nephilim in the Old Testament. And I think there's this idea in ancient thought and ancient mythologies and, and ancient wisdom that there was a class of beings that existed before humans that were closer to God, but also mortal maybe. And the Anunnaki definitely kind of fit that mold. And some of the sources, though, it doesn't get talked about as much because you get like Zecharia Sitchin, who will say stuff like the Anunnaki came from the outer space and came here. And I think it's true in some sources that it does portray the Anunnaki as coming from the sky and the heavens. But a lot of sources, especially the older ones, the Anunnaki are judges in the underworld. So then that doesn't get as much airtime, I think, is that they're underground coming up instead of. So I don't know. It depends on the source, though. But yeah, Anunnaki is fascinating because Anu means heaven and Ki means earth. So, and they are the sons of heaven and earth. The Anunnaki are coming from the god Anu, who's the god of heaven, and they're also the children of Ki, the mother of the earth. So they're the Anunnaki, the sons of heaven and earth. So, and that's how the Nephilim are described. The Nephilim are described as the sons of the angels and the women from earth. And then the Titans are also, in Greek mythology, are also very similar. The Titans in Greek mythology are sons of Uranos and Gaia. Our Uranos is the god of heaven. Gaia is the earth mother. So you can see in all the different mythologies that there's this group of people who are sons of heaven and sons of earth. They're like hybrids of humans and gods.
Man, it just makes me think of cargo cults a little bit. Like in Vietnam, when we would land in the Vietnam War and we'd land at a random island on the way over and we'd give the natives that had never had contact with other humans, we'd give them cigarettes and supplies and whatever and then take off. And we'd come back like 3 years later and they had built little models of our planes. They had tattooed USA on their chests and they were praying to the gods that the gods would come back. And because it just blew their minds that some group of gods flew in, gave them these like tobacco that they had never smoked before, all of these strange things that were new to them, and then took off into the sky. And
Damn.
I think that's so interesting. I don't know. You look at, I think in one sense, I want to look at that and go, I would never do that. But like also, I guess if an alien spaceship came out of the sky and landed and gave me technology that I'd never seen before and then left, you might go, that kind of felt like a god. And I don't know, but
What's the difference, right?
What's the difference? I
mean,
mean,
it's just a word we're using to describe some out of this world thing,
right?
You know?
And so maybe there was, I don't know. It's fun to think about. Maybe
Yeah.
there was something other than the proof that there is a lot of evidence elsewhere, other than all of these myths continuing on from different people groups for thousands of years. Maybe it started that way, and for some reason they left and have never come back. But it's turned into these
I mean,
mythologies.
if there was a contact of aliens and humans in the deep past, then I wouldn't be surprised that it made its way into our mythologies. That there's some sort of remembered, shared memory of this time where there was, because look, the universe is so vast, it's infinite. We're not alone. There's gonna be people, there's gonna be life out there smarter than us. We're not on the frontier of knowledge. I mean, if we were, that would be dark. That'd be messed up.
If we're the peak.
Yeah. like with our Twitter right now, like that's it. Like Andrew Tate and
welcome to the top.
Trump. Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be sad.
You ever consider your gods were idiots?
Yeah. So I think there's something out there that's smarter than, more capable, more advanced, can travel faster, maybe at the speed of light. And maybe that's what happened in the Stone Age that got humans to develop so much faster, was there was some sort of content. I'm not opposed to that idea. I don't think
it's fun to think about.
It's fun to think about, and it does make sense. It does make sense that could have happened. It's just the way academics are, they're not looking for theories. They're looking for what the evidence says.
Sure.
So we have to be in two different ways of looking at it. You
have to be able to hold two opposing ideas in your head at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I think it's definitely plausible. I think I wouldn't be shocked if that actually happened.
Yeah. How wild.
And if the idea of gods came from some sort of shared memory of some sort of ET contact.
I mean, if they came down and gave some technology, I mean, I guess the only thing that we have cargo cults from Vietnam. We've seen it on a step down. Like instead of gods to humans, go humans to humans that are primitive. And that's what they did.
Right. That's a good point.
That's what they did. They created these little figurines of the planes, and these little, it changed their whole life.
I think that's a really good sample of what could have happened in the past.
Why, if it's happened once.
And the Hindus write about these vimanas.
They do.
Flying ships. Look, I think it's very plausible. I don't hate on that theory at all.
It was just a long time ago.
Yeah.
But you can even think then, let's say that happens, right? In Vietnam, and there's these islands, and then the next generation gets born and they get told by the people who saw the plane, yeah, there's these gods. And then 4 generations later, you got a bunch of people that never saw the plane, but they're like, yeah, my great grandfather saw the plane, and whatever, the god came down. And then you get like 5 more generations down, and you see how the story would they're like, we have to remember, and it turns into this ritualistic thing, but no one's ever actually seen the god anymore because it's been 100 years or 200 years or whatever. Right. And like, what does that morph into? It
morphs into mythology.
Yeah. Does everyone just go, that's just an old wives' tale. We shouldn't think about that anymore. But everyone's like, but we've all heard it, and it's been in our culture for 200 years, and we all have been listening to this. And like, it's this dissipating memory.
I got an example of that. Santa Claus. Santa Claus real?
Kinda.
I'm not going to answer that here nor there.
Most people think he's not.
Right.
But it turns out there really is a Saint Nicholas who lived in Constantinople. And and there were stories written about him of throwing bags of money into people's houses. And so there was a guy named Saint Nicholas who's a real person. He might have did some acts of charity. And then over time, he ends up as Santa Claus, the guy with the reindeer flying house to house. And you can see how real events can morph into something that people think is just silly.
Right.
But like, there was a guy named Saint Nicholas. He's a real person. And now when you say Santa Claus, people go, Santa Claus.
Nothing to it.
Yeah. And I was like, well, actually, there was a guy. I think the same thing might have happened with Jesus. There might have been a guy who maybe did some things and got some people on his side, and he was well loved. And then after 40 years, 50, 60 years, his whole story is like this, oh, he was the son of God. He did all these miracles, and like, okay,
Well, that would be so I guess I can see it happening. The idea that a human gets deified over time because politics comes in of there's all these warring factions of who believes what, and my story of Jesus is better than your story of Jesus. And no, my story
Right.
of Jesus is better than, because you keep writing about Jesus. And so there's this one-upsmanship.
And then next thing you know, you have 1,000 stories about this one guy.
And it just keeps getting, well, here's what we believe, and he fed 5,000. Well, here's what we believe, and he walked on water. Well,
Right.
here's what we believed. And, I don't know if that's what happened or not, but humans have done that in other areas. And, it's easy to see how that could be, the incentives could be there to embellish.
And to bring that over to alien contact, it could have been a simple, look, there's some intergalactic technology, and they're going from galaxy to galaxy, and they don't have a lot of time. They can't stay here, but they find life. They find these hominids here. And like, look, we're going to plant some ideas in their head, and hopefully they can pick up on it. And when we come back in 10,000, I don't know,
whatever,
20,000 years, maybe we can be able to actually teach them more things because they'll be smarter. And then they go. And that was just a simple contact, they taught them a couple of mathematical equations, something a little simple, right? And they left. And then that gets glorified into the gods came, and they came here. They actually ruled for a little bit. They told us to do this, and they add all these legends that didn't actually have it. It was a simple contact. And then it got morphed into this big mythological war in the heavens, and these gods did this, and these gods, like you said, all this one-upmanship, and then it becomes, that didn't happen at all. None of that is true. It's all mythology.
Right.
But it could have been very simple. It could have been just a simple contact.
It could have been cargo cult in Vietnam. We just needed to land and reprovision and get out of here.
Exactly. It could have been something simple.
Pit stop.
And they just thought, what did I just hear? There were some people who came from up there.
And they give me this thing, and I smoke it, and then I feel weird. And you're like, this is magic. That's magic. That's magic. That's
and then
magic.
they lose those artifacts because people fight over them.
And they hold
get
them.
destroyed.
And they're like, this was proof.
The Ark of the Covenant might have been some sort of
nuclear reactor.
Yeah, but it's all lost now. So now it's all mythology. Look, I'm open to that idea.
It's so interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, no proof, whatever, but it's
not. It's one of those creative constructions of the past that lends some sort of idea to why things are they are.
Right. It's explanatory. Other than the alternative explanation of mythology is just they made it up. What? They just made it up? Oh, and there's a bunch of cultures that have similar-ish stories, and well, it's in our subconscious. And you're like, maybe. I mean, maybe it's just a subconscious story that we all tell, and it's just emergent as a species. It's it's part of our DNA or something that we all tell these similar stories.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, maybe there's a gene for that we could find.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
and to sort of play that card, I think when you look at beavers across the world building similar dams, you go, humans are across the world building similar ideas.
Sure.
That's one way to look at it.
Totally.
And then the other way to look at it is maybe they do remember something.
But why? Beavers build dams because it's a home that they have to build. Why would we tell these things?
It's true.
Why would it emerge randomly?
Mythology is a little different than dams. I guess you're right about that.
It's a little different. I mean, it is similar. There is something, maybe it is in our code.
Yeah.
Right. But why? Why is that in there?
For a species that can create such high abstractions and delusions that it can believe in, maybe it's part of the control mechanism. In order for us to self-organize and stay and not just kill each other, we all have to come to some core belief, some core delusion that we all believe in. So maybe it's just something we have to achieve.
Plato talks about this in the Republic. He says, in order to keep a republic in line where there's not chaos and crime and complete corruption, you have to have the people believe that the laws were given by the gods from antiquity. If you don't have that, you're done.
Because it's optional. If it wasn't given by someone who's not here anymore,
Yeah.
if it was given by you,
If it's given by humans, who
then
cares?
I get to go, why do you make the rules? But if you're like, I didn't make the
But if
rules,
it was-
these are old, passed
gotta be
down.
the gods
fallacy
that
of authority.
created you did.
It's the separation of authority. The
Yeah.
executive and the
Yeah.
operator have to be
I'm just the
split.
messenger. Don't kill me.
That's right.
Yeah.
The board
Yep.
voted, and I'm
that-
just the guy doing this right. Look, just doing my job.
Yep.
The executives did that. And if the executives are in the past, then you can't even talk to them anymore. You just following orders? Wow.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
It is, especially when you have them believe that these are divine laws that came down That's different. It's a whole different. People start to really listen to those things because they're like, "What if I'm wrong? I don't want to be. I better be this. I might as well just go Pascal's wager." You know?
Yeah.
So we end up just accepting it.
Yeah.
Man. This was
Good
awesome.
place to wrap.
This is great.
Yeah.
Dude, it's
Thanks
so
for-
fun chatting.
It's
Yeah.
so fun getting to know you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for telling
Likewise.
your story too.
Yeah.
I love your content.
You might have some exclusive stuff here that I haven't told anyone yet. So
Right on.
Wow.
I think there's a few things I mentioned in here that I haven't mentioned anywhere else. So
Oh, that's
Oh,
great. I
appreciate it,
love your
man.
channel.
Yeah.
Thanks for making what you've been making, and thanks for taking an interest in thinking critically and thinking rationally and carrying things forward. You know so much
thanks, man.
about a lot that I feel like you've forgotten more about first and second century text than I know about first and second century texts. So thanks for all the work that
No
you're doing.
doubt, man.
Appreciate
no
that.
doubt.
Cool.
It's been good.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
See you, everybody.